Hey there, I'm the Mad Catster, and am I glad to see you here? Well, the Ace family has finally spoken out, and their web of bullshit has been woven, and we are going to talk about that right now, and we're going to discuss some of the inconsistencies, etc. So let's jump in. I just got through watching the Ace family's explanation video, and oh, those poor people, they've been so victimized by everyone, and it's not their fault. This has happened to them. Just kidding. What they spun was a web of bullshit yesterday in the video that they posted, trying to excuse away and blame away the mess that they've made out of their house. And let me tell you, they did a pretty good job of spinning the spin and pointing fingers at everybody else. But the truth is, if you examine the things that they said and compare it to the record, it's not quite accurate. So what they basically were saying in their video, the main thing was that the reason why the house got foreclosed was because they never got a certificate of occupancy for their house. Fairly accurate what they said. A certificate of occupancy is after the city has inspected all of the work that's been done on construction in a house, they give you what's called a certificate of occupancy. And what that is your final approval that the house is able to legally be inhabited.
We never got a certificate of occupancy. We are not legally able to be occupants in our home that we've been paying for, that we purchased for almost 3 years. We have never had a certificate of occupancy.
So they are correct. They never did get a certificate of occupancy. However, they weren't exactly accurate in everything that they said. And I'm going to explain to you right now. And I've gone on to the city of Los Angeles's website and pulled up the record of their certificate of occupancy and found that this is what the truth is. And I'm going to put it up here so you can look at it. The Los Angeles Department of Building Safety permit information and certificate of occupancy details. And you can see here that I've highlighted certificate of occupancy clearances, meaning the things that had to be signed off on by the city for them to issue the final certificate of occupancy. It says pending, but if you looked at the list, okay, so everything says okay for certificate of occupancy except for two things. Something called Bmi Verification, which the issue apparently is that the legal description is incorrect and the final tract map is not recorded. What that means is the legal description of the property for the city's tax database for the property is not accurate, probably because it wasn't updated to describe the new combination of the two houses into one property. So that's a fairly minor thing, and so is the final tract map not being recorded. So in other words, a new map of the property showing the boundaries and structures, etc., needed to be created and recorded. So that's a fairly simple thing to fix. And the only other thing that says pending, and by the way, this is Antoinette, and I will be telling you her story at the end of this video if you stick around. But anyway, so the only other thing on this list, it says heat vent AC verification pending. So from what I see on here, those are the only two hangups for them getting a certificate of occupancy. And if you look down, also it says certificate of occupancy conditions. You see everything on that list is either approved or approved with conditions. So there was no major hangup that I can see other than apparently a final inspection for the HVAC system and for them to record the correct tract map and legal description of the property. So those are the only two things. And so the Ace family went on and on about how they have spent over 2 years waiting for the certificate of occupancy. It's all the fault of the contractor, and the contractor didn't have his right license, and he was using blah, 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 blah.
The contractor, he was not a licensed contractor, and he was using someone else's contracting license, and we were unaware of it for 2 years.
So this is all irrelevant to the fact that these were the only two things that needed to be fixed. Now, if they were having trouble with their contractor, why didn't they fire the contractor and get someone new? And in fact, they mentioned in part of the video that they did have a friend of the family who was a contractor from Palmdale, I think she said, that he came to help them and even got, as Catherine said, even got his license in Woodland Hills.
So he even because he's based out of Palmdale, he even got his license in Woodland Hills area just so that he could help us.
Did he really?
Yes, he did.
Well, first of all, they made it sound like that was a big favor. Contractors are licensed by the state of California, not by each individual city. So why he would have needed to get his license in Woodland Hills is beyond me. Because if he's a licensed contractor in California, he's a licensed contractor in California. You don't get your license from the city. But anyways, so why didn't that guy arrange to just have the final inspection done? And if there was an issue with the HVAC system, fix whatever it was, and then just get certificate of occupancy. It shouldn't have taken them sitting around for 2 years for this to happen. It was just some mystical thing that was going to fall from heaven. This is, if they were proactive, it shouldn't have been an issue. There are only 2 small things left on the list. Number 1. Number 2, they talked about how there were all of these problems with the house. The house is such a money pit and a shithole dump, and pointed out things like the front door apparently was laminated with plywood instead of being solid. What did she say? Mahogany or whatever. Catherine was trying to say mahogany. Okay, whoop-de-doo. So that's a fix. You surely could have swapped out the door. I'm sure it had some kind of a warranty on it. If it was a defective product, then it should have been exchanged. Okay, problem solved. Number 2, it leaks every time it rains. Now, this was something that I found interesting because she said every time someone uses the bathroom, it leaks, and she went to some old video showing water dripping from a light fixture.
It rains in my house every time someone uses one of the bathrooms. You'll see water downstairs.
And then she showed video of her uncle in the house pointing out where the ceiling had been stained from water dripping, and he said that it was because of condensation from the HVAC ducts, which I understand that. I've actually had that problem before myself, and usually it's because the HVAC duct wasn't properly insulated to prevent the condensation from building up. But then Catherine went on to contradict him and say, every time it rains, I have to worry about water.
The leak here, every time it rained, as you can see, this puddle situation, every time it rained.
Yeah, you look at it there, it'll bubble up every time because what's happening, water's getting through the AC condensation returns.
It's if it's the HVAC not being properly insulated, it has nothing to do whether it's raining outside or not. So that's a crock of shit. And I'm guessing that might be one of the reasons why the HVAC hadn't been signed off on by the city, is probably because it had to be, the ceilings probably need to be opened up and the ducts properly insulated. But again, that was something they should have been able to fix. And as I said, they could have fired the contractor, had this friend of theirs take care of these 2 minor things. He could have gotten subcontractors in to do the work, and that should have been it, and it should have been resolved. Then they talked about how the pool was defective, and they referenced the fact when shithead McBroom put a jet ski into a residential swimming pool, and they act like that's something you should be able to do. You should be able to put a jet ski into your pool. Why not? Everybody should be able to do that.
Remember when Austin went in the jet ski and the neighbors were complaining? There should be nothing wrong ever with an owner of a home doing anything he wants with his pool. But this is the issue. There was no retaining wall built around the bottom hill of our house because the builder didn't build one.
And then they blamed, the water went down, there was no retaining wall. Well, if you look at this photograph of their house and you look down below the pool, you could see there's a retaining wall. And in fact, if you go even lower, it looks like there might be 2 more retaining walls. So that's a crock of shit. And Austin mentioned the fact that there were cracks in the pool. Well, yes, shithead, if you put a jet ski in your pool and you zoom around like you're on the open water, you're probably going to do some structural damage to your pool. So that's not on the contractor, that's on you, moron. So that was just, it's the things that they were picking at were just ridiculous. And they go, if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, you can't have gas. And we were so cold, we had a newborn baby. It's like, well, okay, you can't have gas because of the certificate of occupancy, but you have electricity?
Since we didn't have the certificate of occupancy, we didn't have like a lot of these things like hot water.
Yeah.
Sure, we had it. It was just temporary. Like it was Jimmy rigged. If you guys know what that means.
So we didn't have hot water, and I was giving my babies full bath because I didn't have a choice.
Think about it, because they're wondering, like, if you guys didn't have all the things, how are you actually living there?
And you have running water and sewer, and you have everything else. So first of all, okay, if you don't have gas, if the gas hasn't been hooked up, then that, first of all, that shouldn't have anything to do with the certificate of occupancy. Getting gas brought to the house is part of the whole construction process. But so why didn't they just rig up something to use electric for the heat? And then they tried to say, oh, we jerry-rigged stuff to get hot water. It's like, jerry-rigged what? You would have had to either steal electricity because it didn't exist in your house, or you're just telling lies. My guess is Antoinette's being a little pain. My guess is they had, I mean, the electricity clearly is there. The water heater is probably electric. So that whole cry thing about, oh, we didn't have heat and we had to jerry-rig hot water and we were cooking on hot plates. It's like, well, why didn't you just get a freaking electric stove then if gas was the issue? Instead of making it sound like, oh, poor us, poor us. So I just found the whole sad affair just so contrived, as usual with them. You know, and they were really hitting on, oh, the haters. They love to laugh and make fun of us, and oh, why do they pick on us?
People were literally like
happy
that our house was like under foreclosure. Like we were gonna lose our house. Like people really thought this was like the best thing that's ever happened to the world.
And, you know, the reason is because of shit like this. You're telling lies to people. You're not just being straight with everybody. If you were just straight with everybody, you might get some sympathy. You know, but you don't, you first you deny things are happening, then you lie about them, and then you try to blame other people, and it's like nobody has any respect for you because you don't tell the truth. It's not because we just said, oh, let's all pick on the McBrooms because they look like a good target. It's because they're not credible, honorable people. Okay? The other thing that really cracked me up, okay, now, just so you know, I mean, you know I'm a lawyer. Some of you probably remember back in 2008 and 9 when we had the Great Recession. Well, at that time, I was doing foreclosure and bankruptcy work. So I handled a slew of foreclosures. So I know how the process works. And Catherine McBroom sat there and expects us to believe that, well, she said, I sent the payment and I looked in my account and the money came back. And I didn't know what happened. So I called Austin's father, Alan, and said, Alan, what's going on? He's like, oh, the bank doesn't want to deal with you anymore, so they're not going to take your money. Well, first of all, that's bullshit. They can't refuse to take your money. There would have to be some other condition present for them not to take it. Either you've already defaulted and they've decided, we're not going to take your money now because it's too late. We're going to proceed with the foreclosure, or your loan came due and you didn't pay what you were supposed to pay at the end of the loan, and so they're not going to take your money. But they don't just decide randomly. You have an agreement with them. You know, when you take a mortgage out on a property, there's this huge stack of paperwork that you do. They can't just randomly say, oh, we've decided we don't want to do business with you anymore. We're not going to take your money. We're just going to take your house. That's not how it works. Okay? And so that whole storyline, again, is bullshit. Okay? What happens is they fail to make a payment, so the bank will send them a late notice. Then they fail to make another payment, they'll send them a late notice. And finally, when they reach the point of default, then the bank will default them. At that point, the bank won't take the money. But Catherine made it sound like our property went into foreclosure in the system and we didn't find out about it. It was like, well, that's a crock of shit, because by law, they have to send you all these notices before you get to the foreclosure point. So they had notice. There's no doubt they had notice. Otherwise, they could have argued the foreclosure was not valid. So again, they just won't accept responsibility. They won't tell the truth. They won't be honest with people. And again, that's why people get on them and get on their case about this stuff. It's not because they want to pick on the poor McBrooms. It's because the poor McBrooms don't ever tell the truth. They talked about the foreclosure. There's a few things that I had a problem with. They made it sound like, first of all, that the house was sold. They kept referring it to like it was a sale. And the bank bought it back and all this other stuff, which is just nonsense because it went to auction. The bank didn't buy it back. The property reverted to the lender because nobody bid on the property. They didn't say, oh, we're going to screw the McBrooms and get their house cheaper than what it's worth. Nobody wanted to buy the house at auction, so automatically and by contract, it went back to the lender. So there was no buying back of the house, which brings me to another point. Okay, if the McBrooms seriously wanted to just let go of this house, as they said, because it was such a dump, then rather than allow the foreclosure to go forward and to screw up the credit for the Ace Hat collection, which was the legal owner, they could have done a couple of things. One thing they could have done is what's known as a short sale. That's when you put the property up for sale, you get the lender's agreement, you sell the house sometimes at a loss, but you get a buyer to buy it for less than probably what it's worth, and even sometimes less than what you owe the bank, in order to just get the property sold, get the bank some money, and then they write off the rest, and sometimes you're responsible for whatever the difference is. Or they could have done something that's even simpler, what's known as a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And what that means is you sign the house back to the lender and they don't foreclose on you. That way you don't have a foreclosure on your record. That would have been extremely simple for them to do, but they didn't do it. So, that's why I have a hard time believing anything that they've said about this whole process. I think that they're just really full of shit, that they're irresponsible, as I've said before. And I just think that things got out of hand. They bit off more than they can chew. They clearly didn't do anything to try to rectify the situation. And as I showed you, it wouldn't have taken very much for them to get that certificate of occupancy. And Catherine went on about, the pandemic. Well, you know what? The pandemic might slow things down, but it wasn't like there was nothing happening. So if it was a matter of them getting foreclosed on because they couldn't get a new lender to remortgage the house because there was no certificate of occupancy, I'm sure they could have found a way to push that process along if they really, really wanted to. They also talked about something about there was, and I know that there is another parcel of land, and they said, we didn't want it as dirt, we wanted to build something there, but we didn't have a certificate of occupancy. Well, from what I saw on the record, these are two separate parcels. Even though they're part of the same property, they're listed as two separate parcels is what it looks like. So the certificate of occupancy on the main parcel where the house is has nothing to do with them getting permit to build something on the second site. But I'm sure they just didn't have the money. They couldn't get financing, probably because they're overextended as it is. So that whole, we couldn't build on it because we didn't have a certificate of occupancy is also nonsense. So all in all, it was a video that they clearly spent some time thinking about how they were going to spin what's really happened. And McBroom shitnado and bullshit-a-thon has continued on and on. They've been quiet since the foreclosure in terms of talking about it until now, because I'm sure they sat around for hours and hours trying to figure out how can we make it look like this wasn't our fault, or that we decided we didn't want the house anymore. It just was such nonsense. It really was. And Austin McBroom is giggling and rolling back on the couch like, this house is such a shithole. It's like, from the things that they're talking about, it's not like the house was falling down. It wasn't like there were structural issues. And you can see on that list that I put up about the approvals from the city, the only major thing left was approval on the HVAC system. So I don't know what it is that they are trying to say really held this up, other than the fact that they just didn't take the initiative to get it finalized, and they didn't have the money to continue to carry the property because they overextended themselves. Plain and simple. So now they're going to start their new life, supposedly this house with heated floors that they're moving into.
What the hell has heated floors.
Which they're trying to make sound like it's a better house. My guess is it's probably a lot smaller, and it's probably a lot less money, because it's probably a house that they can afford, when the house that they were living in they clearly could not afford. So the smoke screen is just that. It's a smoke screen, folks. The reality is they screwed up. They aren't taking responsibility, and they want all those naive people out there to believe that they're just victims, even though at the start of the video they said, we're not going to blame anybody. We're not going to play the victim.
I will never play the victim, and I will never say that this is all like their fault. I kept saying, oh my God, I can't wait to tell people like how badly these people screwed us. I can't wait to tell the world.
Here they are playing the victim again, because it's never their fault. They never take responsibility. They also alluded to the fact that the LiveX Live lawsuit was supposedly going into settlements.
The other one is with LiveX.
Yeah,
and that one's going into settlement right now, so
I'll check on that. I didn't see anything that indicated that yet, but maybe they are coming up with a settlement. I don't know. If there is, I'll surely let you know about it. So stay tuned at the end of the video, because I'm done my rant now. Stay tuned at the end of the video. I'll tell you about Antoinette. And I thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe. We've gone over 600 subscribers now. I'm really excited. I know doesn't sound like a lot in YouTube world, but once I hit 1,000, I'll be monetized, and whatever tiny bit of money I might make off of being monetized is all to go to the care of these lovely creatures that I call my kids, my cats, my 16 cats, my rescue cats. As you can probably imagine, it's very expensive, and I'm not complaining, because I willingly and happily adopt each and every one of them. But 16 cats, I pay my vet a small fortune, probably enough to buy a good used car every year. And between food, treats, and everything, it's expensive. So I'd be really thrilled to get money from YouTube for doing this stuff. I don't do it just for that, because I'm sure it's not going to be very much money even when I do get monetized. I love just doing it. I love talking to you guys, and I love discussing this crap. Ow, don't bite me. She's biting me. But thanks again. Thanks for watching. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe. I will see you in the next video. If you stay tuned, I'll tell you about Antoinette. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. So, as I promised, for those of you who have faithfully stuck by, this is Antoinette. Antoinette's story, it's not really sad, because Antoinette is not one of the cats that was... Ow! She's trying to play. She's purring when she's doing that, so she's not bad. Antoinette was brought to the shelter with all of her kittens. She just had kittens, and I've had her now for, oh God, I don't know, 8 years. But she was brought with her kittens. All of her kittens got adopted. Antoinette was left without her kittens, which made me really feel bad, because if I had got... Ow! I don't know what's wrong with her. If I had gotten there... But again, she's purring, so she's not mad. If I had gotten there before all the kittens were gone, I would have probably taken whatever kittens were left, because I would have felt so bad about her being separated from her kittens. I had another cat that died several years ago, who I had for a very long time, who I literally was there when they were taking her out of the cage to put her to sleep, because she was sick with an upper respiratory infection, and the shelter didn't have an isolation area, so if they allowed her to stay, she was going to infect the rest of the shelter. When they were taking her out, being as naive as I was, and her name was Sasha, she was a black cat, she was my first black cat, I said, oh, are you going to give her medication? They're like, no, unfortunately, we have to put her to sleep, because we can't quarantine her. And I was like, oh my God, you can't just tell me that you're going to put this poor cat to sleep. And to make it worse, they told me that Sasha's kittens were all brought in with her, but they were so young they couldn't be adopted out, and they put all the kittens to sleep. And it just, oh my God, it just killed me. So that's why I say, if I had gotten there before Antoinette's kittens were all adopted, I would have probably taken all of them together, because I would have hated to have separated her. But anyway, she's the sweetest, other than the fact that she's biting me today. She's the sweetest cat. She loves to come and snuggle with me and sit on my pillow and follow me around. She's so quiet and so sweet most of the time. But that's Antoinette's story. So Antoinette's not one of the tragic cases. I was going to tell you today, but I really don't want this to be melancholy. But one of my cats died last week, and I'll tell you about her and her brother in my next video. I actually had a different video that I was going to put up today until this McBroom shitstorm swirled up again. But my cat Margot died last week, and she had a brother who also died in June. And I'll tell you I'm not going to get into it now. I'll tell you their story in the next video that I'm going to post, hopefully tomorrow. But I'm okay. It's been a week. She was old. They had both been old, and I, even though it was sudden, it wasn't a shock like it could have been. But I'll tell you about it next time. Sorry, I don't want to get into a downer here, but thank you again so much. I really, really appreciate the support. Everybody has been so great, and Sloan, if you know who he is, he gave me a shout out in his video last week that I just was absolutely, because I watch his stuff because I think he's a really nice guy, and I like the work that he puts out. But I saw him give me a shout out, and it was like unbelievable. It came, not too many days after Margot had died, and it just was such an uplift for me to see, and it helped, re-energize me, and I really appreciate you guys supporting me. I hope that we would continue to grow, and I look forward to continuing to do this because I do enjoy this. It's a great outlet for me to do some of my research skills, which I love to research things and to talk about and explain things, because I like to expose bullshit and I like to talk about the law. And I thank you so much for your support. I will see you in the next video.
Pretty please. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. I get a treat for every new sub. Thank you.